welcome. We're going to dive into a bit of a discussion around tantric relating in everyday life. What does that even mean, and what does it mean to tantrically relate with another, relate with life, relate with existence? How can we bring more of ourselves, more of our true essence into our everyday interactions in a way that really allows the fullness of who we are to be seen, to be recognized, to not shy away from the places where often things will arise. I notice in myself when I go into my own process and things are coming up, I often just want to hide away from my beloved. It's like, oh, she doesn't need to handle that part of me. I'm going to deal with it myself. And when we're talking about this way of being in everyday life, like where can we love to share the joy, but can we share sometimes when we're, in pain and in challenge, and not make the other person wrong about it? And I know I'm constantly learning this very much myself, because there's a part of our programming that's like, they've done something to me, I've had a reaction, but can I stay in my own strength inside to not make them wrong, to not make her wrong as though she's become the perpetrator and I'm the victim? And in that way of being, it can create more love, it can create more acceptance when either partner isn't running away from the places where pain is, the places where uncomfortability is, and allowing that to be the expression of what we're diving into.
Yeah, and also allowing lots of pleasure, choosing what brings you joy and relating to that. So for me, tantric relating in everyday life really requires a deep honesty with yourself first and foremost, and then honesty with those that you relate to. And I think a lot of the time when there's, this question of can we be ourselves, and can we be ourselves? Can we show all of ourselves? Can we be in our full rapture, our full joy, our full pleasure, share that with the people around us? And can we also be with the tears or the things that are a bit more difficult to feel? And really, it's not as easy as just going, oh, okay, I'm going to start not hiding and not making my partner the problem when something goes wrong, or my mother or my father or my children. It doesn't work like that. What's required for tantric relating is that within your own being, the focus is taken away from the external and into the inner landscape. Not just when things come up, but really as a practice that you do every day, as a practice that's carried out throughout everything that you're relating to. So it's like, okay, can I get honest with myself right now? Wow, I've woken up and I'm feeling really anxious. Can I breathe into that? Wow, I've woken up and there's lots of excitement and joy and I want to make love. Can I breathe into that? And then we breathe into that. And maybe we make love, maybe we have breakfast, maybe we go on an adventure, or maybe we breathe into the anxiety and feel some fear, and we get real with that, and then we can share that. But when things become suppressed, when we don't follow our joy, when we don't allow ourselves to feel the pain that's there, someone else becomes the reason why we didn't follow our bliss, or the reason why we're feeling pain. So I think when there isn't the capacity to relate tantrically, people are doing one of two things. They're either suppressing their emotional body, suppressing their joy, suppressing their pain, and then making others responsible for their happiness and their pain, making them either their enemy or their savior. Or they're in this kind of way of living that is surviving but not really thriving. And this can happen in spirituality as well as mainstream, but it's like we're living for the future, or we're living for the practice, or, and there's not this freedom of the soul where we're in the mystery of, okay, if I get honest with my being today, where is the mystery taking me? if I get honest with my being today, how would I relate to this person and this person and this person? And there's also a space where there's a lot more emotion, there's a lot more sensuality, there's a lot more adventure. And for me, like, yeah, even though sometimes you may go into blaming, it's very rare, and it's beautiful for me to just be with someone who constantly chooses what brings him joy with awareness, and is willing to stay. Like, we've never had an argument where Aaron's ran off or gone somewhere and left me, which is the first relationship where I've ever experienced that. And he really stays and communicates. So I think that's a big part of it. You know, can we stay? Can we, even when we want to turn our partner into an enemy or beloved or a savior, or we want to change our children, or we want to change our parents, it's like, can we just be here, get honest with ourselves, and then get honest with them? And what that really translates to is we're just following the naturalness of our being. You know, we're not trying anymore. We're just like, here I am and here you are. And, you know, and in that, polarity naturally happens too. You know, I'm in a woman's body and I have a feminine essence. He's in a male body and he has a masculine essence. So when I can follow my own naturalness, then I'm much more receptive. And when he can follow his naturalness, then you know, he's going to be really present. And then if we can feel that dance here, but also within ourselves, then yeah, tantric relating emerges.
And how many of you listening can relate to a time in your life when you've gotten upset and you've made your partner the enemy? You've made them wrong just to not really sit with what's underneath. And you know, I know in growing up in my own life, there's always this constant place of, let me make somebody else wrong so that way I can feel like I'm right. And it always is this place of creating separation. So I notice in my own tendencies when there is arguments or disagreements, which isn't very often, but when it comes up, there's this place of me like wanting to, you know, push her away. You're the one that's wrong. I can be the one that's right, so I don't actually have to look at what's happening. And I notice in having a bit more conscious conversation and relating, there's a place where can I just sit with the pain of whatever's happening, not needing to make anyone right or wrong, and just allow that to move through the body, to allow the emotions to be there, to allow the uncomfortability to be there, to allow the pleasure to be there, to allow all of that to be there, and just say yes to it and not shy away. And I feel like in doing that, I'm finding in our relationship this part of me that's being rewired. This part of me, this part of my nervous system that's normally like finds a lot of safety and either reverting away, being really introverted in the time of difficulty, or getting really upset and just like in every part of my body finding the things that I need to say to make her feel like shit so I can feel good. If you relate to that, if there's a part of you who are like, wow, I've been in an argument recently, it doesn't even need to be with your beloved, it can be with a family member, and you are following that tendency, then yeah, I want to share a couple very simple things that you can do to start to change that program and start to change that pattern. And really the first thing, we say this a lot, is to pause and to breathe. Like what happens in our body is we're in this reaction, we're in this place of reactivity. And we have to have enough awareness of that reactivity to notice, wow, I'm about to make her completely wrong, yell and scream and kick and scream. Can I just pause for a moment and take awareness of the action that's probably going to come through me? And in taking that role as a witness, it starts to change the perspective of it all. It's not to bypass the emotions that are there, but it's starting to get awareness of how your normal reactivity may occur. And having that awareness creates the spaciousness for a different outcome to be there. But it requires that normal part of you that's like, let me react, to say, let me pause for a moment, still continue to breathe and feel, but slow down enough to know, where can I include love here? Where can I not make right or wrong, but actually let myself have my experience, but still recognize that this woman I love really, she may have said something that I disagreed with, but she's not the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to push her down into a hole. I can actually just sit with my experience and let it be there. So that first step is really pausing and breathing to take a bigger awareness of life.
And the key there is you are experiencing it, right? We often separate ourselves from the experience because we're focusing on something outside of ourselves. And, we're talking about partnership because here we are. But, this happens, with children, with employees, with people you're working with friends, with parents. And it's like, okay, so right now I'm feeling uncomfortable. Where is my attention? And the pausing and the breathing brings our attention here, which is really the key to being tantric. People think that tantric means, play parties and I don't know, just all of the neo-tantra bullshit, which, there's lots of beauty in the sexuality component of tantra. But at the end of the day, it all becomes just another fetish unless you understand what the tradition is based on. And the tradition is based on taking the focus away from externalizing your experience and really internalizing that. So once we've paused and we've breathed and we've recognized, hey, this is me experiencing this, now we have an opportunity. Now we have a power choice where we go, okay, if I'm experiencing this big reaction because I'm feeling like my partner's not showing up with enough presence, or my child is not being grateful enough, or my sister isn't attuning to me, or whatever it may be, whatever the story is, the second step is to unwrap yourself from that narrative. Because that narrative is based on thoughts. That's not who you are. We think that's who we are. That's just our conditioning, and it's often running a story of victimhood. So it's like, unwrap yourself from that narrative and be prepared to feel what's alive in you fully. And what's alive in you fully has a lot of wisdom. It's like whenever I go into reaction, I'm really curious. I'm like, fuck, that was a huge reaction. And it happened to me last week. And if anyone's read my latest post on longing, the argument we had nothing to do with my longing to be taken care of, and yet it had everything to do with that. On the surface, there's no way that's what it was. But then when I really just breathed, and Aaron was beautiful, and, once I just breathed into my body and was crying, he held space for me. And, he said, well, what is it? What is it? I'm like, I don't want to express it because I don't want to put it on you. He's like, no, I want you to express it. I'm like, I just have all of this longing, and there were so many tears, and, we went through a lot together. And in that honesty of my longing, the next hour and a half was me crying in his arms, raging, feeling. There were hardly any words, but he really got to see the fullness of me in a different way. And I got to be revealed in a way I'd never had before. So when we can be honest with ourselves, we can be honest with the people that we love. And vulnerability is really such a key to tantric relating. It's like, can we be vulnerable with our fears? Can we be vulnerable with our longing? Can we be vulnerable with our desires? And I've really been playing with in lovemaking lately, just really speaking up and saying, hey, this is what, getting even more specific, this is what I'd really love right now. And even the slightest thing that I used to tolerate, just really saying, hey, I don't like that. And there's not many things I don't like, but I could feel that part of me that would hold back, not wanting to hurt his feelings, not wanting to ruin the moment. And he's so beautiful and receptive. So I would say that, the pause, the breathe, the recognizing that you're in the center of this experience and breathing into that and allowing the mystery to unfold of what that direct experience is showing you. And then with that capacity to be honest with oneself, bringing that honesty to another for deeper intimacy and sharing whatever needs, desires, fears or boundaries are alive in that, because often those things are alive in that.
And there's a piece I want to speak into more deeply there, and it's around vulnerability, which is a term that gets thrown around in whether it's spiritual circles or tantric circles. It's like, I'm being vulnerable now. And there's vulnerability is beautiful, but if you notice yourself being vulnerable with an agendaed outcome, you're not actually being vulnerable. Like there's a part of you that is being vulnerable, but there's part of your mind that's like, oh, if I'm vulnerable now, I'm going to get X, Y, and Z. So that's not vulnerability, that's mental manipulations that using the term of vulnerability to try to achieve something. So if you find yourself doing that, let it go. Like find the deeper longing inside of you that can actually more effectively surrender. And I'm not saying that's easy. I can notice that same part of me that, oh, if I show more vulnerability here, then she's going to receive me in this way. And then that thing that I'm trying to achieve can be more part of what the equation is. So if you notice in your vulnerability that there's still that story that's running about what you're trying to achieve, or what you're trying to give for, or you're trying to be a performer, or you're trying to do this, let it all go. Like the key I'm finding within myself of more tantric living, whatever that may mean for you, is allowing vulnerability to be there in simply unraveling the mystery of what is present. So like in the moment of experiencing her deeper vulnerability, I can take that and then almost use that as a way to gain power over. But I can also just receive her vulnerability and receive the beautiful, heartfelt expression of that. And it doesn't need to mean anything other than, wow, thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for melting my arms. Thank you for expressing what you need. And this is a piece I find of vulnerability that's really important. It's like we want to pause and breathe, and then we want to find where can vulnerability exist without agenda. Where can vulnerability be there without the outcome-focused mindset of I'm going to be vulnerable so I achieve this? And that's a tough wiring to unravel, because it's like the society we live in, we're often doing things to try to achieve goals. So the more you can let that dissolve and you can begin to melt more into the mystery, then vulnerability becomes something that you're just naturally drawn into want to share with the person you love, with your friends, like even people that you wouldn't normally be vulnerable. I notice sometimes male friends in my life where I can find myself wanting to shame them or blame them for things that they've done wrong, but if I meet them in a place of bringing my vulnerability, it creates more spaciousness of truth and love to be there in that connection.
And yeah, the difference between vulnerability and manipulation is that when you're manipulating, you're still in your mind. The vulnerability comes from the feeling body. It comes from no mind. It comes from that deep space of being honest with yourself. So like, sometimes a female client will say to me, but I was so vulnerable with him. I said, I'm really sad and, that really hurt me and, I need this and this. And that's very different to having breathed into a space, felt what you're feeling, recognize a deep longing and a deep need, and actually have no agenda, but you're curious, can this person actually meet me here? And you're not attached to keeping that relationship, actually. Because whenever we're attached to keeping someone, there's always going to be an agenda. There's going to be an agenda to either keep them through what we're saying or have power over them from what we're saying, which is what Aaron was going into. So this honesty with ourselves and then honesty with another, it takes a certain level of commitment to the practice. Commitment to the practice of remembering that you're whole and complete in here, of bringing presence to yourself, of feeling everything fully, and really being held within the tradition of Tantra, not as some kind of, avenue to having more freedom to blow up and sexualize everything, but as a deep knowing of oneself, because that's what Tantra is. You come to deeply know yourself. You come to deeply know life and trust life as your greatest teacher. And you begin to let go of your attachments and your illusions that turn someone into your source of happiness or your source of pain. So that's really at the center of it. And that takes a deeper exploration, which if you're interested in taking, then join us at one of our retreats or our immersions. We have a Living Tantra retreat coming up in March in Bali. And that gives you the whole spectrum. It really gives you so many tools to be able to take your focus from outward to inward and start to discover what it is that you desire and be able to follow that bliss, what it is that you feel deep inside, and really start paying more attention to that, how to create safety for yourself, how to get into your power, all of these things that actually it's not even a learning, it's more of an unlearning, because so much of what we're taught is to be in the mind and to do for the future, to get the body that we want, to get the health that we want, to get the partner that we want, to secure the finances that we want. It's like, if you fuck all of that, if you stop caring about what people think, if you stop worrying about your future, if you stop living in your past, then what arises in the moment of following your naturalness? And that's the question, which sounds very simple, and yet it is profound, and it does take a stripping away, because our whole education system is based on growing the mind and living for the future. So if you want to join us and play in that, and one more thing I want to say about tantric relating, which I've really learned from you, is that is this space of the heart, of really choosing to live in the heart. And in that heart space, wow, someone can be there for you no matter what, and wow, dreams can come true, and life can be an adventure, and life can take care of you, and you can take care of one another, and community is possible, and heaven on earth is possible, and there's so much beauty available that we would both love to share with you guys in that space of living in the heart of living Tantra.
Yeah, so if you're wanting to find out more, if you have any questions, the Living Tantra Retreat is a deep way to dive into all of this experience. And that's why we call it Living Tantra, because it's not just a week, it's a powerful week that changes your life, but it's also, it's a manual, it's information that you can take and apply immediately into your world, to not just get on this amazing ritualistic high, but actually integrate it into your everyday life. And that's really what matters the most to both of us. So I believe the early bird ends about 2 days from now. So if you're wanting to get that better price as well for that retreat, and come sign up and join us in Bali. It's a beautiful, magical land, and we get to share and to dive in. And the place of love can be present inside of your life every day, if you choose that. If you choose the willingness to burn through the things that you've been holding on to experience more joy and allow pain and pleasure to be equal anymore.
Yeah, and the invitation for today, after spending this time with you guys, is to just feel everything fully. Stop thinking so much. Just feel everything fully and follow the naturalness of beingness, and see what happens.
Feel you.
Okay, well, have a beautiful day, everyone. Sending lots of love from Bali.